Should your employees be putting PayPal, eBay, Amazon purchases on company credit cards? What about meals and food? Stick around to learn what problems can be created when these purchases go on credit cards and what you can do about it.
Welcome to the AP Now podcast, the podcast that covers trends, insights, and emerging issues impacting every accounts payable function.
Hi, I'm Mary Schaefer, founder from AP Now, and I'm joined today by Lynn Lawson of Recharged Education. As you may know, she's a renowned card expert. We're interested in her insights on some of the popular consumer vehicles that are somehow creeping into the business world, Amazon, eBay, etc. So, Lynn, is this an issue and why?
Well, thanks, Mary, first of all, for having me. Right away, I have to say it certainly has the potential to be an issue, unless an organization establishes the right controls. The shortest answer to the why question is that anytime an organization allows or does not outright prohibit the commingling of personal and business activities, there's a risk of personal purchases landing on the business side of things, whether that's an innocent mistake or outright fraud.
Right. Well, I like to say sometimes fraud sometimes starts with an honest mistake. The first time it happens, it really is a mistake, and then it's not. All righty.
Exactly.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, just to further elaborate on what I mean by commingling, I'm thinking about people who have a personal account with various vendors, and then they end up adding their P card or their company card to that same account. And so that's where personal purchases could end up getting paid by their employer, especially when people can, by and large, have more than one card tied to an account. So
Right.
we know that's true. Well, before we get, I don't want to spoil what's coming up. So we'll gear up here to the big reveal. But we know that is very possible with a lot of vendors.
Yeah. Okay. So before we talk about Amazon, because that's probably at the top of everyone's list, I know it's at the top of mine.
Where I
Lynn,
was going.
Lynn, could you tell us a little bit about Recharged Education?
Sure, Mary. Just to back up a little bit with my background, I've been dealing with commercial cards, purchasing cards for, I hate to say this number, but more than 20 years.
A big number.
Started out managing a card program for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, and then went to a professional association in an education role in this field. And then I launched Recharged Education back in 2014. Just so I could serve end user or buying organizations as well as providers by providing resources, training, and consulting.
Okay. And so anyone who's listening who might need, for example, a review of their policy or some suggestions in that regard, Lynn would be a perfect choice for you. All righty. So Amazon, it has many features, which is why it kind of puts it at the top of the questionable list. Can you identify the issues that a company might have and might not be aware of?
Well, I think while I know many organizations are aware of this, I need to share it anyway.
Right.
You've got the regular Amazon, on one side that as consumers, pretty much everyone I know has used or uses regularly. And, it's back to what I started to say at the beginning here, that when you allow someone in your organization to put their personal and, consume or commercial card, P card, in their personal account, I mean, you run the mistake or risk, rather, not the mistake. Well, it is a mistake if they choose the wrong card. But then not only that, you really have no visibility into what they're purchasing. So if as an organization you want to allow Amazon usage, I would absolutely prohibit the usage of regular Amazon and lean over to the Amazon Business platform, which, as many of you know, is a completely separate entity from what we use as consumers. It just has more controls, more reporting, gives an organization just great insight and lots of different features and abilities. And I have to also say, I'm not an Amazon expert, so I know they're always evolving what they
Right.
offer. So I don't want to get too detailed into this, but it's a far better way to go. And then you brought up a P card policy a moment ago. I would
Mhm.
explicitly put in your policies that you need to prohibit usage of regular Amazon. Well,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing people have to be aware of with Amazon, it's not just prohibiting regular Amazon, it's calling out Prime memberships too.
Mhm.
I know that many organizations are surprised when audits reveal, oh my goodness, we have all these employees who have purchased with their company card, their purchasing card, an Amazon Prime membership. And we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they think
Right.
they're doing their organization a favor
Right.
here, but they're still able to personally benefit from that. And
Right.
then suddenly you have, a whole bunch of these Prime memberships that you don't need. Because again, if you're using the Amazon business platform, that has an offering too in the Prime arena. But again, it's separate, different
Right.
from the
And you
consumer.
and if you purchased a regular Amazon Prime account, even with good intentions, using it for business, because of the movies and all that other consumer benefits, you could end up being triggering some sort of a fringe benefit tax situation. And who wants that for, I don't know, $129 or whatever it is that Amazon costs now?
Well, very good point there.
Yeah.
Exactly. You do not want to be managing this as an organization.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. My other favorite, PayPal. What
ah,
are the risks, and subsequently, what overall policy should companies have?
well, when it comes to PayPal, let's back up for a moment just for your listeners. As a refresher,
Right.
PayPal amounts to, being a payment service provider.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
just to review how it works, you go in and you set up a PayPal account. And then to that, excuse me, you need to tie a bank account or a debit card, credit card, or all three, or as many credit cards as you want. So here again, you're running the risk if you're allowing them to do that, they might have a personal PayPal account where they've got a personal credit card, and then suddenly they add a company card to that. You run the risk of choosing the wrong one. So just like Amazon in that regard. But it amounts to when you're doing purchases, online, you see that PayPal logo. You can go ahead and choose that option, and the card that you designate will end up getting the charge. So again, it's just I don't see a reason to even
Right.
allow PayPal. It comes with risks. By and large, I would say that any online vendor that someone might be using for business purposes probably would accept a credit card directly,
Right.
your purchasing card.
Right.
You don't need to use PayPal. Now,
Right.
there could be exceptions to that. And I know
Right.
we're going to get even to a few other little tidbit stories as we
Right.
move along here, but I would just call it out, right away. Um,
Right.
the other problem, or not problem, it's more of a challenge with PayPal. If you allow it, the transactions come through on your card. They'll say PayPal, like that's the vendor at the beginning. Then it's followed by an asterisk and the real vendor name. And so it kind of makes it harder to spot the vendors that cardholders are actually using. Now, the simple answer to that is, well, you just audit anything that comes through under PayPal so you can, in fact, see the real vendor name. Well, that's tedious unless you have an auditing solution, which many do. But if you're doing any sort of manual auditing, I mean, this
Right.
gets to be really problematic. And so, do you, want to go down that path or not?
Right.
But certainly if you're prohibiting it, like I'm suggesting you should within your P card policies, you do want to be looking for it as a potential, policy violation. But I don't think you want to manage it.
So I would have a real problem, but I might be overly concerned about fraud if somebody had a PayPal account that had a company bank account attached to it, because I just see a lot of trouble or potential trouble.
Right, right.
And even if there was nothing done wrong by the part of the employee, by the hitting the wrong account, God forbid that they were hacked.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, I guess someone is going to or could potentially argue any of these points with us. I mean, we're talking
Right.
about different risks associated
Right.
with these consumer merchants. Uh, there are different risks even beyond what you and I are talking about.
Right.
But I just think for your true company business, the things you and I are talking about really need to be looked at specifically by organizations when they're developing their policies.
Okay. Before we talk about eBay, which, we've got a lot to say about that, I'm sure you won't be surprised. I'd like to invite you to subscribe. And if you are watching on YouTube, ring the bell at the top right of the screen to be alerted whenever we post new episodes. Now, back to eBay. Do you think there should be an out and out prohibition, or should there be some exceptions? And I think I was sharing with you the story about a colleague of mine who was charged with her organization of filling out some archives and for the company archives, and the things that she wanted were on eBay, and so she was buying them on eBay, and then the company credit card bill would come on. There would be a big to-do about what's this eBay purchase, and finally, and she'd explain, and it would go away, and then 2 months later, here it was again. And finally, her boss told her, "Don't do this anymore. Even if you have to pay more, don't get it through eBay," which was kind
Well,
of weird.
I mean, that actually, so all of those are really good points. And ironically enough, I have heard a similar story, an organization that needed to purchase something. And I think it was even in the periodical arena, much like what you're
Right,
saying.
yeah,
And the only place to find what they needed was eBay. But,
yeah,
you're indicating that, chances are you can find it somewhere else, might be at a higher price. And then you run into that. Do you want the lowest price or do you want a little more risk getting into eBay? And, again, as consumers, we might be using eBay. It might work out just fine for us and we
right,
never have a problem. But we know that anyone can sell on eBay. And so you don't necessarily know who you're dealing with. And, whether it's consumer or business, you could end up getting burned. And so as an organization, it's another one where someone might have a good intention on, oh, I'm going to go to eBay. I know I can find this for a better price than,
right,
where I can, otherwise get it. It's not worth it in the end. And what does that mean? A $5 difference? I think most of the purchases that end up on a P card, although not always, are lower value. And if someone's gung ho about trying to save $5-10 on something that's $200,
right.
it's just not worth it. So it's another one where within your card, program policies, procedures, I would prohibit eBay. But just like PayPal, I mean, you have to be also auditing for that from time to time to make sure it's not sneaking through.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're aware, Lynn, because we've talked about it a lot, there are some new interesting payment vehicles, Venmo, Zelle, and things of that nature, which while they were developed primarily for peer-to-peer transactions, they are seeping into the corporate world. And we're starting to see instances where companies are using them. So what are your thoughts on these? And will that change when the feds get involved in, I think it's 2023? Should this be allowed? And do you think your opinion will change once the feds get involved? I know that's a lot of questions.
Well, well, you know what? I actually zeroed in on something you said. You know of organizations that are using these peer-to-peer. For what reason? See, now I'm going to interview you.
So I don't know, but I know the last survey that we did with Nacha, 10%, I almost fell on the floor when I saw this. First of all, when he had instant payments, I'm like, why is that included? We're, B2B, and 10% of the companies were using it. And the explanation, Lynn, is that some small businesses, especially with Zelle, are using it. So if you're buying from a small supplier, I think, which hopefully this is not on anybody's company credit card, but like I know a lot of hairdressers take it.
Right.
And so, or repair shops. So, there might be a legitimate reason possibly to have it. But again, I go back to what you said with eBay. Wouldn't you be able to use a credit card?
Right, right. So, that's where I think, at least for the time being, your card policies should prohibit these peer-to-peer or person-to-person cash. I just call them cash
They
conduits.
are, yeah, they are basically cash. Yeah.
And Well, I'm a Venmo user. I don't use Zelle. But as a Venmo user, I know that if you want to back the payment with a credit card, there's a fee associated with that.
Right, right.
So you certainly don't want to cause your organization to pay these unnecessary fees. And so, yeah, that's something I would, kind of put in that category of cash. You don't want to be able to allow any sort of cash activity on your cards. I know there might be an exception when it comes to a travel card used for a business trip. That's a whole different topic. But by and large, I would prohibit that. Now, you brought up the Fed. So you're referring to, I believe, their Fed Now product
Yes.
that you can get
Yeah.
information on online. You're right. I think the target date is sitting right now at 2023. And the interesting thing about that one, I don't want to say it's more legitimate. That's not true, but it's being put out there for a broader purpose. So not just P2P. You brought up hair salons.
Right.
It's not just for the hair salon.
Desperate to get into one.
But it actually can have some B2B applications, business to business,
Right.
B2B. And it'll end up being an instant payment or real-time payments. You've probably heard both buzzwords. I mean, there's been a lot of interest in these, and they've already been more developed outside of the United States.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it would be a viable option for organizations to consider, in different situations. Maybe it's a case of, financial management group, an accounts payable department that wants absolute control over when the money goes out the door. So for that purpose, instant payments, real-time payments might be appealing. But there might also just be sort of one-off situations. Maybe you're a manufacturing company and suddenly your process is stopped because you broke down, you need a spare part.
Right.
Maybe it's something custom or just very unique, whatever. But in an emergency, the vendor from whom you're buying from might say, well, we're not going to ship this till we have the money in hand. And
Right.
if your manufacturing process is stopped, well, a great way to get that money in hand is through
Right.
something like the instant payments, which, again, Fed Now will be an option, but we're going to keep seeing, greater development in this area. It's actually going to be exciting to watch.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. The other place where sometimes Venmo would show up, and this makes me uncomfortable, I'm going to be honest with you. You and I go out to dinner. It's at a business function. We're at a conference together. They won't split the check. So you put the whole thing on your credit card, and then I Venmo you $50 or whatever my portion of it is. And then I put that in on my expense report. And I'm really uncomfortable when I see things like that, although I can understand why it might be a very legitimate transaction.
Well, sure. And actually, I was thinking about that, but then I think it's opening the door to maybe some
Yes.
duplicate payments and things like that. So, any one of these that we've talked about, I mean, Amazon, there's an obvious solution for, but, PayPal, again, I'm going, do you really need it in the business world? Maybe it's on an exception basis.
Right.
eBay too, you brought up a legitimate exception,
Right.
but maybe not. It depends on. Everything is so unique, but by and large, I mean, most organizations don't need several of these types of things open to them.
Right.
But there's always exceptions. And if you're going to allow it, the key is to think through the controls,
Right.
and no matter what, you've got the auditing factor that you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on instant payments? Real time?
I'm always thinking about it from the fraud angle, and I will be more comfortable when the Fed's involved. But the pace that it's growing at, I think we're going to see it. I think we're going. People want money now. We also have the payroll issue. I don't know how that's going to work out. But if you let somebody go, you have to give them their money on the last day. So this is going to be, this will definitely be an option. So,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to. I know you're doing a lot more investigating, and you're putting together a program from us. And so in July, you'll be featured on an AP Now webinar, and we'll put a link to that down in the show notes. We'll also have a link to Lynn's website if you want to learn more about Lynn. Also, you may also like episode 71, where Lynn joins us to discuss P-card challenges. The link will appear momentarily to the left. She'll expand on this topic and other items that companies commonly prohibit in this AP Now webinar. Again, we'll have a link to that now. As always, if you like this episode, we appreciate a thumbs up or a share.